Well, we come down to the last discussion, and here we have to turn to our churches, local congregations, if you wish. Because you would think that the natural thing would be if the local congregations of Christians were given to spiritual transformation. And you would think that that would come naturally from what Jesus said to us and the commission that he left us here to fulfill. And we might expect, for example, that a local congregation would be a group of people who are living together along the lines that we've been talking about. They would be learning, for example, how to love one another, how to relate to one another. They would be helping one another become different in their bodies and in their minds and so on. Actually, it seems like that just doesn't happen as a rule. What we're focused on more in our local congregation turns out to be correct teaching. And this is mainly having to do with the mind. And it's almost as if we were students and we were going to have to pass a test on doctrine or something. And we wanted to make sure that we got the right doctrine. And so within a local group, it's very likely going to be the doctrinal distinctives and some practices that will be focused on. And for example, being Baptist, being Methodist, being Mennonite, being whatever group, turns out to be what is in the forefront. The background, perhaps things that are not so related to the denominational distinctives or the distinctives of the particular group. And we might think, well, it should look more like a hospital where you have people taken in, sometimes in the emergency room, or sometimes they walk in, and as they stay there, they're treated, and progressively they get better, and then at the other end they come out and they're living in the world as children of light. Some might still be very sick. Some would be perhaps in intensive care. And that would be appropriate, wouldn't it? Because when we're thinking about the local congregations, we're thinking about groups of disciples. And these, to be a disciple is not to be advanced. Hopefully, being a disciple would lead you there, but you can be a disciple and be very green and very crude. And so we would expect and we would receive people. And that was Jesus' way, wasn't it? Christ receiveth sinful men. And he takes them into the local congregation. But then what is the focus? Unfortunately, we're often distracted with so many different things, and we don't focus on spiritual transformation. So much so that I said years ago in a book that I don't know of a single group that has a plan, a concretely thought out plan, to teach people in their fellowships to do everything Jesus said. See, now if you're looking at spiritual transformation, you might expect there to be, let's say, a 3-month course on how to bless those who curse you. That's one of the things Jesus said, wasn't it? Now, actually, we don't normally even think of that as something you could teach. But that's a grave mistake. Now, we'd have to avoid all kinds of dangers, like the legalism, like, oh, if you don't bless those who curse you, you're a bad person, and we won't let you be a member of our church, right? Or something like that. So we have to stay out of that, and we have to remember now what we've said about teaching, that when we teach in this way of Jesus, we're changing the inner person, so that the natural outflow in this case would be blessing those who curse you. Now, to bless someone means to will their good under the invocation of God. Okay? And we really need that in our families. We need that in our communities. We need that in our nation. We need that in our world. Imagine all the divisions. Imagine if Hindus could bless Muslims. If Israelis could bless Palestinians. If men and women could bless one another in our culture. If white and black, if all of those divisions could bless, if teachers could bless students, if students could bless teachers, what a difference that would make, how badly we need that. You know, this is one reason why when Jesus is teaching, he doesn't just give you a set of laws, he says, now there are 25 of them, and that's it. He gives you a whole bunch, like when Paul, when he writes to Ephesians, he says some things the same as he says Colossians, and other things are different. Why doesn't he say the same thing? Very simple answer, you see. Remember this now. He knows that what he's aiming at is the transformation of the inner person. And actually, if you just get 2 or 3 of those right, the rest of them will fall into place. See, that's the way it works. And the sad thing is, you see, that we get trapped in our churches by paying attention to all of the distinctives and making sure that we've got the furniture placed right, and that the numbers on the Sunday school were all taken, and that so forth and so forth and so on. And we don't do the thing that is essential, which is exemplify, teach, train, aim at bringing people to the place to where they're just able to do the things that Jesus said. It's a simple idea. Now, we have a culture that suggests you can't do that. And others will suggest you shouldn't even try because that would be contrary to grace. And many people think obedience and grace are opposed because they misunderstand both grace and obedience. They in fact supplement one another. You can't have the one without the other. You can't have the one without the other, because grace leads to obedience, and obedience is the outcome of grace and the response to it. See, if I really have trusted Jesus, when I hear him say, bless those who curse you, I'm going to realize that's the best possible thing I could do, and that that's a good thing, and that God will be with me in it and enable me to do it so that I don't, have to bless you through gritted teeth to be right. But I naturally come forth in blessing. Someone curses me, I think of them under the mercy of God, and I say, God, help them, bless them, meet the need of their life. And I say that sincerely, not an attempt to be righteous myself. See, that's where we fall into legalism. We wind up doing things not for the benefit of others, but for our benefit. I've known people who witnessed to other people for their own benefit, so they would be righteous and had no regard to the well-being of the person they're witnessing to. They were just going to do what was right. We get all beyond that. And we stop worrying so much about getting people into heaven and think more about getting heaven into people. We understand that the real outreach is through inreach. And that if we don't go that route, then our outreach will at a certain point hit the wall of diminishing returns and become counterproductive, because the people we've already got in have not been transformed. See, the problem of the people of Christ is never we don't have enough people. Never. The problem is always the quality of the people who are there. And when we bring that level up, you can't stop outreach. You can't stop it, because everyone will want to know, where did that come from? Jesus said, I am come that you might have life and you might have the fullness. He said, the person who drinks of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst again, but the water that I shall give him shall be a river of water, a spring of water springing up into everlasting life. It'll be a flood that comes forth from the person and floods the world. See, that's the stone that is cut out without hands that Daniel spoke of. It is the power of God and his kingdom through his people, and it will achieve what he has proposed to achieve.
And what we've done, it seems to me, in the field of psychology, in my particular area, is we have assumed that that is not the work of the church. Mm-hmm. The church has no business messing with this, because we're the pros, we know all about it. And you people who just know Jesus and the Bible and the Spirit, what do you know? Mm-hmm. So you got to come into our offices, because we'll straighten it out. Remember when I was in private practice years ago, and I would preach at this one church, and just as you were saying this, I mentioned, I thought of this. there was a client of mine over there who was involved in sexual addiction, and there was a guy over there doing this, and there was a woman there who hated her husband about to leave him, having an affair. And I'm up there preaching my heart out and realizing the only places that they were touched were in my office. And I thought, I don't think that's exactly right. There's got to be something in terms of the work of the church is soul care.
But there is something to learn from the therapist's office. I think Richard Lovelace wrote about this. I don't remember for sure. But he was saying one of the things that opened our society up for the language, for therapeutic language, was that spiritual language grew increasingly simplistic, rigid, and moralistic.
No question.
So that whereas historically people who were wise in the way of the Spirit would have understood there is complexity and nuance to the formation of character, it reached a point where it was much easier to say divorced people are bad, people who aren't divorced are good. And not to recognize there could be all kinds of complexities and dynamics. So when there came another system of language to talk about human behavior that had more complexity and nuance to it, people latched onto it because they felt like finally there's something that is giving adequate expression to the complexity that very simple black and white categories does not capture.
When the fundamentalists fought the modernists back in the 20s and 30s, one of their fights was to say people are not good, they're bad, so let's define sin in a way that people can see. And sin then became trivialized into nothing but alcoholism and wife beating. And then Freud comes along and says, you know, there's something beneath the surface. And then the therapeutic culture replaced the church to some degree. But when we understand that the scriptures address the deep issues of the soul, then I think that maybe we as a church can recover some of the nuances and go beyond the black and white.
Right. Now, how can we return that to the ministry? See, this is the next question. So that the ministry understands that they actually have a field of expertise.
They do.
That deals with the soul and recaptures the traditional idea of cure of souls as the responsibility of the teaching faculty of the ministry.
Say a little about that phrase, the cure of souls.
Well, the cure of souls is a very old phrase that was used to refer to what people did in the ministry. In fact, one of the French words for clergy for centuries was cure, we would say, but cure. And it referred to the function that they had. And healing, of course, comes out of the New Testament and is a constant present through the, but then, see, we lost touch with all of that. And it was a part, I believe, of the secularization of the intellect that says fundamentally, you guys don't know nothing. You just do ritual, right? And I would add ritual to Richard Lovelace's series of terms. You see, what I think ritual is in many ways the death of reality in religion, because it becomes a substitute for actual involvement with reality. And so we are doing rituals, and it also always becomes a substitute for holiness and righteousness.
So if the church becomes a community that reclaims the task of the cure of souls, what will it look like?
It will look like a hospital.
And let me take it down.
With doctors who are sick too. We have become a community of the pretenders who then are required to be distant to maintain the pretense, as opposed to a community of the broken who can therefore become intimate in our joint pursuit of God. And I think it's a failure to recognize that the brokenness within each of us is real. I'm uncomfortable with people until I know them. And what I have to know about them is that they are as miserably dependent, that's the wrong word, not miserably, but they are as profoundly dependent on God as I am. And that without God there's nothing to them that has eternal redemptive value. We're just not a safe bunch of people, and we're legalists, we're quick to judge, we're quick to protect ourselves. Pretense is the way we make it. Success is the definition of being blessed by God. All these things are involved, it seems to me. I would think that the greatest need, you ask what could be done in a church, I think in addition to talking to the leaders about maybe some greater level of personal vulnerability, some greater level of silence in the church service now and then, some greater level of reciting the creed with, I'm not sure if I believe that, but I want to. I think that would be a profound experience for me.
That's great.
But then beyond that kind of thing, which I think is huge, is what do we do when we get together in a small group? I don't know if I can think of a more important question. what do we do? Do we know our impact on each other? Do we have any sensitivity to the way I come across keeps you from sharing?
Mm-hmm.
The way I come across keeps you from feeling safe. Do I know my impact on you? What is going on in my interior world? My wife, for the first 15 years of our marriage, would not pray in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And after 15 years, she finally had the courage to say to me, Larry, I've listened to you criticize the way other people pray. I wasn't about to be criticized. It took her 18 years for her to acknowledge her history of sexual abuse. And that's to my shame. And that's when I began thinking really hard about what is my impact. And I believe if I'm broken before God and know what the word grace means in my life, not just forgiveness, but the fact that He is going to work in my heart regardless of where I am, if I yield myself to Him, then maybe I can believe that about you. And maybe you'll smell the grace coming out of me in a way that might let you be open to share a little bit.
I think the pretending theme you were talking about earlier is such a part of, it's a part of life everywhere. I mean, you talk to anybody, you talk to somebody who's going to tell you about what they saw on TV last night, and they'll start, well, I don't watch much TV, but.
I'm usually in the scriptures.
Yeah, that's right. Because that desire to want to control how other people are thinking of me is so strong, and to equate myself with, I am who you think I am.
I feel that almost all the time.
I do. That is going on inside me, and that's part of why solitude is so life-giving, because I go there and it's almost like a luxury. It's almost like a, I don't know, a meal or something, because I feel like, you know what, right now, nobody's thinking of me, or I can exist without thinking about what other people are thinking of me, and I'm still alive, and it feels so good and so freeing.
What did Bonhoeffer say? The person who...
Let the one who is afraid of solitude beware community, and let the one who's afraid of community beware of solitude.
And maybe if I'm wired more toward community and you toward solitude, then maybe I need to go toward you, need to go toward me.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is solitude is a place where you turn loose.
Yes. In a way that you simply don't other places.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And somebody said that the tears are not healing unless there's an audience. And there's been some research on that, but the audience is always fundamentally God.
Huh.
And that's solitude. Because solitude is not solitude. Solitude is the presence of God, which is community.
Well, I'm glad you invested your time in this curriculum. Our prayer is that you've raised a white flag of surrender. No more being God. And you've invited Christ in word and spirit to renovate your heart and to move in forever.
This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long.
And now countdown races.
Someone sit on this guy. Doodah.